Welcome everyone to another Just Economy podcast. We look forward to our great guest today. A few things I want to cover. This is the Just Economy podcast sponsored by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. We are a nonprofit organization, statewide membership. What we do is ensure that the financial institutions reinvest into the community per the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. We foster partnerships and collaborations on different things in the community, and we look forward to having those investments from the banks and inviting you to be a part of those investments. And one of the investments was Truist Bank gave us a grant in order to provide nonprofit capacity building. We've already done the first iteration of that project, $210,000 we put on the street to nonprofits. The second iteration starts June 15th, so look out for those dates. Check social media. We will be letting you know when you can start applying. Application is online, no more than 3 pages, a couple of attachments. You can apply for up to $20,000. This is only for organizations in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County with budgets of $500,000 or less. So we look forward to bringing that to you again. And on that note, what I did was we submitted a report to several of the banks, hoping that they will invest as well. So we look forward to carrying on this project for quite a while. Also, with CRAF will be next week on the 8th. I will be in New York City. We will be having community bankers meetings with the banks in New York City. I will be up there for 4 days. We'll be talking about the Community Reinvestment Act, their continued reinvestment in the community, especially in light of all that's been happening as far as federal funding is concerned, and the lack of a better phrase, the attack on nonprofits. So we'll be talking about those things, and I will be up there all week. I'll report back on our next podcast and on our website, so when I return. So today is a very special day. Well, all of them are special, but I have a lawyer in the house, an attorney in the house today as our special guest. And our special guest today is Michael Langley of the Florida Justice Initiative. We're going to talk to him about some legal items in the community that he can help us with, and some things that the nonprofits or social impact organizations should be highly concerned with. So, without further ado, Michael Langley. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing very well, Cornell. Thank you for having me here this afternoon.
Great to see you. So, he and I have also serve in the Nonprofit Executive Alliance. Michael comes to all the events and talks about, from the legal standpoint, what's going on that affects the social impact organizations. So today we're going to get into some of that. So, Michael, before we even start though, let's tell us a little about you, where you're from, what made the desire to become an attorney, and to get into this type of work from the attorney point of view.
Yeah, Cornell, I appreciate that question. And, I just consider myself to be very blessed. I grew up in rural Virginia, but one of my earliest memories was actually having a neighbor that flew a Confederate flag in his yard mere houses down from me. And that led me to think, I've got to change hearts and minds in my own neighborhood, and how tough a sledding that's going to be. And so I have been civically minded ever since I was young. I used to march with my family with the local NAACP house with the oldest continuous records in the United States. My family has a large military background as well, so service has really been ingrained in me pretty much my entire life. And so over the years, I've actually had the opportunity to connect with some civil rights champions, people like the late Muhammad Ali, more recently, renowned civil rights attorney Ben Crump as well, and really focus on a lot of these issues that are happening in our world. But I really got into this work when I was part of a board of a nonprofit who actually gave an opportunity to visit a women's prison. Before that, I had never been to a women's prison, never been to any sort of correctional facility. But something told me it was going to be a very unique experience. And so I just went in with an open mind, and I was listening to the stories of the women that were there. And one of the things that really stood out to me was a woman who was talking about the fact that she was driving down the road one day. She got in a bad car accident, in which she lost both her husband and her young child at the time. Not only that, she ended up being hospitalized. And part of her treatment for recovery was being prescribed by a doctor. So you can probably imagine what happened there. She ended up getting addicted to opiates, and without that context, the judge and the prosecutor threw the book at her. And so not only does she have to deal with the mental trauma of losing the two people she loved most in the world, but also recovery, and then of course the emotional trauma of being someone with a record. And that sparked something in me to say, we gotta approach this a little bit differently. And from then on, I've been working ever since to have smarter approaches to justice reform and making sure that we're protecting vulnerable.
Well, Michael, that's a story and a half to make you to make you drift towards a particular project. And I think everyone has that, where something happened in our lives that pushed us that way, to make us want to work in a particular project or give back into the community. So thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. Michael, let's talk about the Florida Justice Institute. So exactly what is the Florida Justice Institute, and what do they do?
Thanks for that question, Cornell. And for the last 45 plus years, Florida Justice Institute has been integral in preserving the civil rights of those who are vulnerable, those people who are disenfranchised throughout the state, those people who come from underinvested communities. And so our work really revolves around making sure that we are preserving human rights for people who have been entangled in the justice system. 90% of the people who are serving time will eventually return to their communities. Not only that, we want to empower people who are experiencing homelessness, people who are the working poor as well, making sure that they really have an opportunity to thrive, but also try to provide dignity for people with disabilities. So we do that, in a sense, through impact litigation. We have done that for many years. We touch every corner of the state. And the big thing about it is we focus on systemic change. And so the suits that we may file end up having a widespread impact. So, we may file something here in Dade County that could have far-reaching impact way up to the Capitol in Tallahassee. And so it's incumbent upon us that your zip code shouldn't determine your proximity to justice. And so what we view our role is trying to increase that access, because everybody deserves an advocate, no matter who we are, where we're from, how we got there, or what we do. And that's really what our goals are.
You said something very, very important, Michael. You talked about systemic. And systemic is very important to me. As far as I'm concerned, we can push things at grassroots level, but we got to get rid of the systemic problems: systemic poverty, systemic injustice, systemic racism. Those things are key, because those change things, in my opinion, permanently, right? So how is it that you can integrate what you guys do to alleviate some of the systemic problems that we have?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, let me offer some context here, and I want to get into some numbers, because in addition to having a law degree, I also have my MBA, so I understand the impact that numbers and figures can have. And so Citigroup, the financial giant, they actually did a study a few years back that quantified the impact of things like systemic racism and the policies that are implemented around that, and how interconnected things like lack of access to capital, lack of the ability to afford housing, the criminal justice system, education, access to transportation and the basics, to the tune of $16 trillion in lost economic value. And that's over just a 20-year period. That's not counting decades before. And so using that lens, we want to engage in issues that can have not only systemic impact, but are moral and economic imperatives. And so typically what will happen is that we will come into contact with information that we are aware of that are patterns that are happening in some form or another. I'll give you one example of this, is the fact that last summer, the Supreme Court actually permitted local and state governments to criminalize people who are unhoused, even when there's no safe shelter available in their Grants Pass versus Johnson ruling. And so you see these opportunistic governments in so-called both blue and red states that have pushed out policies and laws that then criminalized things like people being able to sleep. We all do that, no matter who we are or where we're from. We all need to sleep. It's a life-sustaining activity. And so what we then encountered is that folks were criminalizing people for doing things that they needed to survive. And so we decided that we're going to take these folks on. And the important thing is we want to make sure that when we do file legislation or pursue, it does have that widespread impact. And so typically we'll see things that are targeting only one specific group. And we know that tends to be unconstitutional. We have been very successful over our 45 plus years in challenging these unconstitutional ordinances as laws because of that mindset.
I'm so happy to hear that you've been successful. This is something that gets at me that we're still, I hate to say it, but I'm still fighting the same fights that my grandmother had to fight. And that really bothers me. You know what I mean? That just tells me that we still can't get past, although we've come a long way, and in some ways we're going backwards these days. But is that we still have to fight those same fights that should have been over with 60, 70 years ago. Right. But we're still right back here, still fighting the same fight. Yeah. There was another study done by a global lending group that talked about since 1995, the United States of America has lost $60 trillion due to systemic racism. Yeah. 60 trillion? Think of what we could have done with that money. Yeah. Just think how much better off our country would be with 60 trillion just since 1995. Yeah. So those systemic attacks are really, really appreciated. Glad that you guys are being successful in that. So do you take on individual clients, or is it something that's more class action so you can affect a lot of people instead of just individuals? Yeah,
so the answer is a little bit of both. Okay. Typically what we try to do is things that are just common sense approaches, that are smarter approaches, that transcend ideology, that transcend party. And so what we try to focus on is if it comes to a situation where it is just blatant and systemic discrimination, then we will engage in a potential class action suit to make sure that this doesn't happen to whichever class of people or individual. But some occasions we will actually look at individual issues, and that will end up also becoming a systemic change. Let me give you an example of this. And it actually happened this session that we had a law that got passed by the legislature that was positive for justice reform. And so we had a client, and she had a son who unfortunately unalived himself while he was incarcerated. The scenario was that he was suffering from severe mental issues, and unfortunately took his own life, was not supervised, and that really forced his mother, his estate, to take action. And there's no better advocate than a grieving mother. And so came to us.
And one of the reasons MAD has been so successful, right?
100%. And she came to us, and I'm not saying that this happened overnight, but it does take a concerted effort and an actual investment of time and resources to make this happen. And so this year, we were able to help get the Tristan Murphy Act passed at the state legislature. And so what that does is it's designed to disentangle those people who are experiencing mental health challenges from being incarcerated and entangled in the justice system and get the actual treatment and the resources and the support that they need versus just being warehoused in the Department of Corrections. So that's an example that really took it to, as an individual case, that will
That
now
affected
impact
everyone. Impacted the whole
everyone
state.
now. Yes. So we're unfortunate that situation had to occur, and oftentimes tragedy does spark change. We're hoping that we don't need to have more tragedies in order to have a positive impact.
Yeah, I believe that also. Unfortunately, that something bad has to happen for us to try to do something good, and I wish we could not do it that way.
Right.
Well, Michael, one question that constantly bothers me is things will happen, in particular social impact organizations that affect social impact organizations, and we try to work around it. We don't necessarily fight it, and I keep trying to implore my fellow nonprofits that, okay, let's use the same tactics that those who are our, lack of a better word, our adversaries use, and let's file suit. But everybody's kind of skeptical of that. So I'd like to get your thoughts on social impact organizations filing suit on things that that not only affect them, but if it affects a social impact organization, it affects the community.
Right. Well, in my view, social enterprises, they fill a vital role because they are the ones that are filling in the gaps where government doesn't step in or where private business doesn't step in. And so it really takes sort of that combination of that funnel and sort of a trisector approach to make sure that we are impacting the community as we mentioned. But I always tell my team, we can't take care of the community unless we take care of ourselves. And so part of us being a legal advocacy organization, we are not only advocating for our clients and our communities, really advocating for ourselves as well. And I encourage our peer organizations, our social enterprises, social impact organizations to advocate for themselves because, like I mentioned, if you don't believe in yourself and your organizational mission, how is someone going to support those efforts to make society better? And in order to do that, sometimes you have to stand up and fight and take a stand for yourself. And I think there are so law firms that will step up and help in the event that some organizations are come under threat from whichever adverse sort of circumstance, whether it is a governmental entity or maybe a potential funder or whatever it might be. There are people that are certainly very passionate about this work and believe that you should not be targeted for the good work that you do just because someone happens to disagree with it. And so this is why it's so important that these efforts transcend ideology and administration. It's about doing what's right. It's about actually stepping up and making sure that you can withstand the impact that's happening in society because of your role.
So I totally agree. As you know, in the conversations and meetings we've been in, I'm all about a fight.
Yes.
Because I just don't believe in just rolling over.
Correct.
If we can do what we need to do because someone has an idea that this shouldn't be happening,
Right.
or make laws or policies that make it worse on society.
Correct.
And we know that it makes it worse on society, but we don't do anything. Our answer has always been, okay, let's just work around it.
Right.
While working around it doesn't help the community. And if you're a social impact organization, the object of the game is to help the community.
Correct.
If you just let people make laws or make policies that negate that help and negate that community being able to thrive,
Right.
we have a problem,
Right.
and we have to fight back. And I think fighting back includes using the same tactics they use.
Yes.
And that's filing suit in court,
Right.
and taking it to court and doing our chances there.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to hear you say that. I'm hoping that you social impact organizations are listening to Michael out there, because this is something that has to be done. We can't just bury our head in the sand and say, okay, maybe they won't mess with us, or maybe it'll go away, or in 4 years things will change. No, No, we got to fight now. Community does not have time to wait 4 years. They don't have time to wait a year or the next legislative session. They need help now, and if we're going to do that, we got to be able to. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you talking about that.
Absolutely.
So, the FG, or the FJ, I'm sorry, has 3 pillars. And could you go over those 3 pillars for me?
Yeah, so for over 45 years, FJI has worked really to preserve human rights for those who have had contact in the justice system, those who are unhoused, that making sure that they have a fighting chance to thrive. We try to empower them to protect themselves and their survival. And unfortunately, zip code dictates a lot of your quality of life in the U.S. And unfortunately, we want to make sure that folks have the ability to have an advocate in their corner. In addition to that, we believe it's vitally important to provide dignity for people with disabilities as well. One of the cases that we've worked on in the past is actually working with people who had a disability find meaningful employment so that they can really provide sort of that self-determination. It's just that they didn't have a meaningful opportunity to do that before, and we try to come in and examine some of the issues that are happening because no one should be criminalized for their lifestyle, their identity, or their circumstances. It is certainly something that does not help society, and when you look at it, it's all about making sure that we're having productive members of society. They can't do that when they are being held down and when they're already in a vulnerable spot. And so we want to make sure that folks can really and truly enjoy that life, liberty, and that pursuit of happiness that's guaranteed to every single citizen.
So Michael said something very, very important, not just about because of their identity, but their circumstances. So as we saw last year, I think at the last legislature, 2024, I believe, and they talked about criminalizing the homeless.
Yes.
Criminalizing someone because they have no place to live.
Correct.
And I guess my thing is, or there's issues, especially around mental issues, and as a veteran, seeing a lot of veterans out there who
Yes.
who can't function in society after they've gone through in service of this country. And then you want to criminalize those folks.
Yes.
And I guess what really irked me about that law was, okay, you arrest them, you keep them in jail for a couple of weeks.
Correct.
In the meantime, they've lost all their stuff that they've been carrying around
Right.
forever and ever. They lost all of that, and then you let them out. So what's the point? It's not like you're keeping them forever.
Yeah.
You or incarcerating them forever.
Yeah.
You're going to let them out in probably less than 30 days, right?
Yes.
And then they're right back in the circumstance and not only that, but having to start over
Right.
and starting over is a really bad term. I get that, but they were having to start over from where they were. It just amazed me that that even happened.
Yeah. Well, there's this trope out there that people who are unhoused choose to be in that situation. Let me just tell you, as someone who grew up on government assistance, whose parents had multiple jobs to make sure that they were able to provide for me, but still needing some sort of support, most of us are much closer to living on the street than they are to someone like Elon Musk. That's just a fact. And a lot of times what you see is people who don't have a sort of a stable living situation are in fact working. It's just the cost of living that they are unable to keep up with. And the most notorious example of this is the city of Miami Beach. City of Miami Beach had most of their arrests over the last year or so have been of unhoused people. Now, when you look at the income that it takes for someone to afford a market rate unit, you have to make something like $65 an hour in order to do that. I don't know many teachers that are making $65 an hour. I don't know many hospitality folks that are making $65 an hour.
Even on Miami Beach.
I don't know many first responders who are making $65 an hour, been able to afford that. And so we have to get out of this zero-sum mindset that you're only worthy of housing if you make a certain amount. And so if we really are looking about solving issues, we need to get to the root cause instead of exacerbating the issue. So we need to look at affordable housing. You need to look at alternative construction like tiny homes. They have used recycled materials. They've been able to 3D print homes. So there are other ways that we can get people in housing other than sort of luxury units. Now, but that certainly takes people with courage. People who have the will to want to actually solve the problem instead of just working on serving one community over another.
It takes that investment. You gotta have that investment. You gotta have that social investment. I think that folks gotta understand that if you want a community to thrive, it has to be invested in. Just like you invest in Amazon or anything else, in order for it to grow, we have to invest in that. We have to invest time, resources. People have to be invested in it in order to make it grow. Now, and I don't want to talk about I want to move on from the homeless issue, but I just think it's so important that we punish people because of their circumstances and do it with a straight face, with no feeling whatsoever. When I remember when the law came out, I was reading it and I'm like, really? You're going to jail people who are unhoused? That's the object of the game here.
Yeah.
That's how we intend to solve it.
Yeah.
I just think that's just so stupid, lack of a better word, and self-centered, I think.
Yeah, and not only that, one of the provisions actually allows private citizens to sue the municipality or the local government if they don't sort of take action. And right, so again, not only are these local governments under pressure by the Supreme Court of the United States, the state legislature in Florida, now they are looking at private citizens who can come in, who, they don't want any buildings in their backyard or shelter or anything to that effect that could actually address the issue from a practical standpoint. They can come in and throw a wrench into everything and again, continue to exacerbate some of the issues.
It simply amazes me how some people who have power and privilege and money want to push their ideas on people who don't. It just amazes me sometimes. So let's move on to another question, and it's something that you wanted to discuss, and that was the interest on trust accounts.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the interest on trust accounts and how it's important in the community.
Yeah, so the interest on trust account, especially in the legal space, is what lawyers use to hold funds that they might receive for a client, and then it will go. That special account will earn interest as it's sitting there in order for that to then be paid out to a potential client, and it allows so many different firms to be able to pursue different litigation, et cetera, as well. And
so wait a minute. So is this in filing suit? This is that account holds that funding.
This will hold the funding that a firm will receive on behalf of a client until it's ready to be paid out. And so why this is important, again, first of all, it actually compensates a organization, but also the client for their efforts. It will enable people to have greater access to the justice system. Unfortunately, again, when you talk about sort of hiring certain law firms, you have to have money in order to be able to do that. A lot of times you don't have as just an outcome if you didn't have an attorney versus if you did have an attorney.
Okay, so hold on a second.
Yes.
So it sounds like you're telling me that this is another barrier to folks having opportunity or having access to the law that everyone's supposed to have. Is that what you're saying to me right now?
That is absolutely correct. And this is why we work so hard to increase access to justice, because that zip code or your income shouldn't determine your ability to have an advocate there for you. And what we're hoping to accomplish is expanding access for more people. And this is why we pursue the suits that we pursue, is so we can make sure that people have a level playing field. And so that particular funding, that interest is held at a financial institution, whether that's a bank or some other type of financial institution, and of course that interest accrues as it gets ready to be paid out. And so there was a bill at the state legislature this year that was designed to try and limit the interest that is paid out on that account, whereby some of the financial institutions would keep the rest of it. And this stemmed from the state Supreme Court ruling last year that the bankers had to pay an actual fair interest rate on the money that accrued in these accounts. And so there's a group of bankers that we don't know who they are. However, they have decided that they want to take this on. It's certainly incentivized by profit. We are incentivized by doing good work. And so the more that is accrued in these counts, the better and more responsive we're able to be to the public. As a public interest law firm, I can't tell you how much that matters to the type of work that we do. But I will tell you, we do have some champions, and I'm really thrilled to see an organization like Ken LaRue at Climate First Bank, who has stepped up. They actually wrote an op-ed about why it's so important for banks to actually do this type of work and support we call it IOTA type of programs as well, so we can do the good work and not have to continually rely on other entities to try and make this systemic change happen. So we're grateful for Ken, Climate First Bank, and we hope that other banks and other financial institutions see the value in the work that we do, because our return on investment I'd put up against anybody.
So the floor, I was in the research that I saw that this has been enacted since 1981 in Florida. So is this a national movement, or is this just a statewide movement that you've had to do with IOTA?
So, funny story, Florida Justice Institute was actually the organization that started the IOTA program in the state of Florida that got adopted nationwide. And so okay. This is a nationwide issue, and lawyers and law firms around the country have access to this funding in large part due to the work of my predecessor and Florida Justice Institute back in several decades ago.
Okay. So are you encouraged by you mentioned a couple of bankers are supporting. Are you encouraged that it will increase, or the program will go, IOTA will go the way you want it to go, or are you discouraged that it won't?
It's hard to say just because of the current environment. Mm. So back in the 1990s, during the Clinton era, there was a very similar attack on sort of legal aid providers through Legal Services Corporation. It was called. That was a federal program, but it placed quite a few restrictions on the type of legal work you could engage in. And so I'd love to say that I am optimistic about it. I will say I'm encouraged by the few bankers that have stepped up and voiced support for this type of work. But the biggest thing that I really want the audience to understand is that again, this transcends party. This transcends ideology. We don't care who you are and where you're from. We only care about doing what's right, making sure that people have a legitimate opportunity to defend themselves, to thrive, to be able to have the type of support that they need in order to make it in this country. And we can't do that when we constantly criminalize them or look down upon them just because they are unable to afford the basics.
You gotta have a special kind of gene to want to attack legal aid
Yes.
for folks. There's something special about you that you don't think that they don't that those folks who are in a community or live in our poorest communities don't deserve the same legal representation
Yeah.
that you can afford, but because you can afford a $300 an hour lawyer.
Yeah.
They don't deserve that because they're low to moderate income, so they don't deserve the same type. So you attack legal aid.
It's unfortunate, but I will say that it is not just legal aid that's under attack. We've seen that big law firms are under attack currently by the federal administration, and it's unfortunate that the rule of law has been under attack, so much so that FJI and several peers around the country actually signed on to Democracy Forward's letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, and really urge her to really not abdicate her responsibility as the nation's Attorney General. She's not the counsel for the President of the United States. She is the America's attorney, and really encouraging her and urging her to preserve the rule of law and the role and the independence of the courts in terms of that. Because if we don't have a really robust legal system, that's
I mean,
the ball game.
we're going to hell quick.
Yeah.
And our legal system has been touted as the best in the world for many, many years,
Yes.
but not so much these days, right? So how can we get involved in FGI? How can we help you guys help the community?
Yeah. So, and I really appreciate that question because we're always looking for really strong partnerships. There's a few different ways that we believe the community organizations can get involved with us. Number one is time. We love people who are willing to invest their time actually engaging with us. Let us know what you're hearing out in the community. If you're seeing disparate treatment of people or communities or neighborhoods or whomever, let us know. Contact us. We will be open to having that dialogue, and if it's something that's actionable, we will investigate further. The second, as I see it, is we are looking for people, as an example, to join our board. We need talented people who care about their community, who care about these issues. You don't just have to be an attorney to be on our board. We're looking for people in finance, people who have been in things like marketing, people who have been consultants and other things that can really help us. Since we touch every part of the state, I think it would be very impressive if we had more people on our board that comprised other parts of the state. So whether someone lives in Orlando or Tampa or Jacksonville, Tallahassee, wherever, we'd love to have you as part of our board. The biggest thing that I would say is, as we talked about, really investing in this work. This is in some ways, I think by design, difficult to access the legal system. And so in order for us to do that, we need people who believe in us. We need people who believe in this work. We need people who believe in their own communities. And what we do by extension is make sure that we're able to try and transcend some of the issues, the barriers that we're seeing. We really want to close the opportunity gap, and in order for us to do that, people actually have to have the barriers removed. in order to do that. And so investing in an organization like FJI would enable us to be more responsive to the community.
I'm stealing that, closing the opportunity gap. I really like that. I'm stealing it. I'll tell you right now.
Sounds good.
Not just because there's a lot of, we talk about a lot of gaps, but the opportunity. Nobody's asking for or demanding that I be treated different than anybody else or be better, maybe because I'm low to moderate income or whatever the case, or the neighborhood that I lived in. But the opportunity should be the same for all of us.
That's
Just
right.
make it equal. That's all I ask.
Yes.
If everything is equal and I'm not taking in that particular slot or not higher, then there's certain things I need to work on to come back and do better next time. But I'm definitely stealing, closing the opportunity gap. I'm stealing it. Consider it gone.
All right.
But Michael talked about some great things. He talked about joining their board and being a part of the organization. Being on the board, and I encourage people to join boards. There's one of the best ways to give back to the community and not just be on the board for the sake of your LinkedIn page. I'm talking about being on the board and being involved in what the board and what that organization does. That's truly, truly important. And it doesn't take a lot of time. I sit on 6 boards right now, 6. 2 of which I'm the president of,
yes,
and or the chair of, and I truly enjoy it. It's a few hours every quarter, and I get to help that organization, help the community. So, and justice is something that we honestly think about every day. We talk about justice and being right and being lawful and being on the right side of law every day. But what we don't do is I think we assume that, especially if we're low to moderate income, we're living in certain neighborhoods, that justice is not available to us.
Right.
So we got to close those opportunity gaps. I'm telling you, I'm stealing it. We got to close those opportunity gaps. And one of the ways to help close those opportunity gaps is get with FGI. Work with them. See how they help. Give them ideas and not just there, sitting there, okay, we're not accepting any ideas. You just heard him. Just heard Michael. They want us involved. They want us to let them know what's happening. They can't obviously can't monitor every single thing on the street, but the whole community can monitor every single thing on the street. And how we do that is get involved with FGI and help them to help us. I think that's the key. And close with opportunity gaps. Boy, I love that phrase. Right. Thank you, Michael. I really love that phrase.
Yes.
So lastly, I asked this question of all my guests. And that is this. I gave you all the power in the world. Mm-hmm. You have the power to make change, the power to do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Cornell, thank you for that question. You know, and I rack my brain, quite often about what is the one thing that we can do to help, as you say, close the opportunity gap. And for me, I wish that every single person had a place to lay their head, a roof over their head, because that's where it all starts. The first educator that you've ever had since you were born came from you being housed. The first meal that you ever had in your life came from you being housed. Your first friends, because you lived near a school because you were housed in a certain community. So housing is the key to unlock a lot of the issues that we're having. A lot of times you can't get a job because you don't have a permanent address. A lot of times you won't be able to find a good school because you don't have that address. A lot of times people go back into prison because they can't get stable housing. Right? So all of these things are really interconnected, and I really want folks to understand that housing is so powerful to helping us solve a lot of these issues. And we have to get out of this NIMBYism, not in my backyard. But here's another acronym for you: BANANA. Build absolutely nothing near in absolutely anything. And so we want to make sure that folks genuinely have an opportunity to thrive. And the only way that they can do that is have, as I said, a stable living arrangement and housing. And so that they can actually, and it's another way to, as an example, pass down generational wealth, as we so often see. And I just wish that every single person If I had that magic wand, I would focus on housing. And we as a country proved that we could do that. You rewind back to 2020, 2021 in the pandemic under the CARES Act. You saw the money that was flowing to get people who were living on the streets into vacant hotel rooms. We've seen people that wanted to convert abandoned strip malls as an example, or convert commercial buildings into residential units. So we can do this. This is not out of the realm of possibility. And I just encourage everybody out there, all our elected officials, all of our business leaders, community stakeholders, to demand it. And that's what I would want to do.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. That is an absolutely great answer. I love that answer. Thank you so much, Michael. So before we leave, please give us your contact information and your website.
Yeah, so you can reach us at www.fji.law. That's www.fji.law. We're on all socials. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Threads. You can even find us on Blue Sky with Florida Justice Institute. So we look forward to hearing from you. Cornell, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Michael. You were the best. And our guest today, Michael Langley from FJI. Thank you so much. This has been a great show. We've talked about some things that that I'm really going to take with me. I got meetings in New York next week, and I'm definitely going to bring on Let's Close the Opportunity Gap. I'm bringing that up in the meetings with the banks next week.
Looking forward to it.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Just Economy podcast. We look forward to seeing you the next time. We will have another intriguing guest within our community. Thanks, and see you soon.